Hi everyone, I'm your host Keshav Chauhan, and this is Milliseconds, a design podcast, and you're listening to The Psychology of Music featuring Avanti Nagral. How have you been? Like, what you're doing in the past week, and how are things going right now?
Mm, Thank you for asking. The past week has been crazy. I've done a few college shows and things which were fun, which is how we actually technically met, or when you
Yeah.
reached out. Um, I've been working on an album, so a ton of work for that back and forth because a lot of my producers and team members and everything for all of that are based all over the world. So just,
Yeah.
calls in different time zones. We've been working on a special project and a special content series, and this week has just been all over the place. I It's just been a lot of recording, shooting, writing, editing, speaking, singing, a lot of things I love to do, but it's been thoda mad.
Yeah. How was your experience with DTU? Like when you came, I think
Thesis.
a week ago. Yeah. How was your experience with our college, DTU, when you
Oh,
came?
DTU was really really fun.
Yeah.
Genuinely, मैंने बहुत ऐसे college appearances किए हैं, but this was really fun. Y'all were super. You had so much energy and you were so interactive, which is hard to do on a Zoom, right?
Yeah.
It's hard because sometimes you feel like you're performing to just black boxes. And even though everybody's cameras weren't turned on, the way in which they were so supportive in the comments and everything, it was really lovely.
That's a good thing to hear for sure. I will ask you a question on your TEDx talk. In your
Yes.
TEDx talk, you mentioned a point based on experience. So, which was like people these days don't take young people too seriously.
Yeah.
They're more like focused on experience, and which is also a reason that young content creators are rising these days. So, do you think that even after stating this, like even after like examples of young people doing really great things, people still focus on experience, like to some extent also it's there still, like in job descriptions, like you need 3 5 years of experience to do something, so they don't care about your skills. Like why do you think it is so? What could be
I
the
mean,
reason?
it's just this idea of safety, right? For a lot of people,
Yeah.
it's the same reason that, for example, a lot of Indian parents prefer for students to become engineers or doctors or lawyers because there's safety in knowing the path, right? So
Yeah.
if somebody's worked at X company for 2 years, 3 years, kuch to sikha hoga, as opposed to somebody who's new or fresh off the block, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it depends person to person. I, for example, personally really like working with young people, because I'm young myself, but beyond
Yeah.
that, no. For example, my design intern she just turned 16, right? And
Oh,
we work with a lot of
that's
young
really
people.
young.
Yeah, she's really, really young, but she's so
Yeah.
hardworking and passionate. And I see that, that drive and that junoon that exists often in young folks, which
Yeah.
you become cynical the older you get, or because you've had that experience, you then no longer give it the same drive and the hunger.
Yeah.
So I think if you are somebody who's able to give an opportunity to somebody who's just starting out and, recognize the talent and the skill and the future potential, I think what happens is we often look at experience, but we don't value potential as much. And I think it's
Yeah,
really
that's
important to
true.
value potential.
I think my viewpoint is that experience after a threshold becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like for the first 2 3 years, it's good. Like that's a minimum level you have to cross. After that, it doesn't matter because you're doing the same thing again and again. You're not doing anything new. So also, do you think this is the reason why young people are moving into careers like dance, music, design, where experience doesn't really matter at all? It only your skills are the things that people focus on. It does not matter what age you are at. Do you
I
think this is?
mean, I think experience still does matter in those fields. I think experience
Yeah.
matters to some degree in the sense of even if it's based on your skill, if you want to build up a network, right? Having been
Yeah.
in the industry, been around people, it matters and it helps. But I think young people are choosing a variety of careers today because they have the opportunity in a way that people didn't, 10, 15 years ago. Because it's so much more accessible. There's so much more knowledge. If you told I don't know, say you told your parents 10 years ago that you wanted to be a designer or a content creator, they would have been like,
Yeah.
"Ye kya bakas hai?"
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
wouldn't have understood. Whereas today, there's enough examples.
Yeah. That's true. In a recent podcast of Raj Samani, he was talking to Ranveer in the podcast, and he asked Ranveer like, which field do you think is going to have a lot of billionaires in the coming years?
Yeah.
And Ranveer's answer was UI UX design, which is way too niche and not something that people would have thought of ten years back, which is like
Totally.
really interesting. Like new fields are coming up these days. Yeah,
Totally.
we're heading into a future where social interactions will mostly virtual as we go down the line. Do you think that Gen Alpha, like the people who are born after 2011 and before 2025, do you think that it will inherently produce more number of introverts as compared to extroverts?
That's interesting. Maybe, but I think we are
Yeah,
also predisposed to a certain social style, right? Even
yeah,
within, um, because it'll be the baseline and the norm for them to interact virtually, there will be some people who will enjoy that and want to seek more and more of it, and there will be some people who won't still like to spend time with themselves, right? I don't think the physicality of being in person determines whether somebody is extroverted or introverted. I think,
okay.
however, it will change the dynamic of social interactions. I've met a few kids who kind of are basically COVID babies, and I've spent a lot of time around kids. And usually, kids are, much more open and free around adults. But people who've been born in 2020, I don't blame them because they're so attached to either a screen or to
Yeah,
just their immediate family, right? So I think it'll make social interactions very different, but
yeah,
uh, but I don't think it'll affect whether somebody's extroverted or introverted. I think it'll change the way in which we see what social interactions mean, right? So, a massive party, which might have been the height of social interaction pre COVID, may not
yeah.
be the case anymore. Instead, maybe, I don't know, 10 years down the line, a massive VR party, right, where everybody's down together in the metaverse might be it.
So what would you prefer, like a massive VR party or a real life social interaction? What's your preference on this?
I would prefer social interaction. I'm not one for massive party if we're
Okay.
doing apples to
Yeah,
apples.
yeah,
I'm for massive parties in general. Part of that's because I don't, drink or anything, so it doesn't appeal to me in the same way.
yeah.
But as an artist, I would so much rather perform for a live audience than for a screen. It
Yeah.
can't replace that energy.
Do you think that in virtual interactions, like people don't feel a sense of tangibility, and do you think due to that, it could not help in solving the problem of loneliness? Like, if I feel lonely, it would be better to like go and meet a person or video call. Like, what's your take on this? Like, in a metaverse, like talking to him or physically meeting him or
I mean, I think there's something to be said about physically meeting and also physical touch. I
yeah,
don't mean just being physical with somebody. I mean just
yeah, yeah,
meet somebody and shake their hand or give them a hug or whatever. I mean, literal biology, right? Often that triggers dopamine or that triggers serotonin in our bodies, and there's something to be said about that physical touch, right? Which allows a biological response. Now, maybe we will evolve as humans the more we interact virtually for other triggers to trigger those things within us. But till that time, I think physical interactions, at the very least, in terms of emotional satiation and like you said, that loneliness will
yeah.
uh, will still be a little bit more will be a little bit better when they're in person.
Yeah. Do you feel as content creators like we both like I usually do like feel crave for like meeting my friends sometimes because it gets to a point that because when we're content creators usually we are in a circle of other content creators
Hmm.
and time schedules do not match every time. So do you feel sometimes like lonely?
Oh, for sure. And I think people's way of treating you also changes, right? People treat you slightly differently. Either they think you've changed or you've become too big for them or whatever it is, right? And so I think
Yeah.
it's a two-way street. I think it's on you to reach out to people and make them know that they're still valued in your life. Um, and also remember that every social interaction is not about content and it's not about being filmed, right? It's about satiating your heart. Um, so I do think that it is, but also you get to the thing I love so much about content is you get to meet really cool people through it. I've
Yeah,
made
that's true.
so many friends over the past 2 years through this field and people in such different fields that I would never have been able to meet otherwise. So I think, it is a social tool and also, making sure that it doesn't consume your only sense of self.
So what was the most difficult part of like content creation in your journey till now?
I mean, I think there's several parts to it. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work, especially if you're somebody who's doing it in multiple forms, right? Being a full-time artist is a lot of work within itself, and then add on other types of content to that, add on, starting and running businesses. It's just a lot to deal with. And it's not just a lot in terms of the actual work you have, right? Because there's a lot of fields where you have a lot of physical work to do. But with content, you also have to be emotionally on all the time,
Yeah,
and the more and more you grow, the more you also get recognized, right? And so now I'm actually hyper conscious that whenever I'm walking down the road, um,
yeah,
I have run into people, which is amazing, and I'm so grateful. But at the same
yeah.
time, I know that if they see me when I'm on an off day, that's going to be their impression of me in real life, you know?
That's
Um,
true.
so
Hmm.
it's just adding
Yeah.
this different layer to that.
Do you think like it gets exhausting of like you have to always show a good side, like smile on the camera when you don't feel like smiling on the camera? With like, do you think it gets exhausting to a point sometimes, like
Oh,
burnout?
100%, which is why I appreciate how social media is becoming more and more real today,
Yeah.
in the sense that more people are talking about mental health, more people are talking about the fact that, yeah, you don't, nobody is constantly smiling all the time. We all have different emotions, and it's okay to feel all of those. Um, I'll give you an example of one thing that felt really foreign.
Yeah.
So, my partner, Stephen, and I, we've been together a while, and I occasionally make some content with him. And there was this one content piece I had to put up for a brand with the two of us. And it was all, like lovey dovey. But that the day I put it up, we were actually having a massive fight. And
Okay.
so it just felt so weird, where it's like you put
Yeah.
this thing up and there's so many people being like couple goals and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, right now I'm really
Hmm.
unhappy with this person. So that
Yeah.
felt sort of dissonant.
Hmm. Yeah. Like showing a different side on screen and a
Yeah.
different side off screen. Yeah. That's it.
I,
So
I,
like yeah, yeah.
sorry, no, go ahead.
No, 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 you go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
No, I was saying I think it's important to be real, right? And to be real about the fact that not
Yeah.
everybody is smiling all the time. Not all relationships are just pyar vyar and love and lovey dovey
Yeah,
stuff,
that's
right?
true.
Um, but it is funny because sometimes you'll be sharing something because you're obligated to, and your current moment of life is slightly different,
Yeah.
Even as an artist, right? Like I might put out a song that I wrote 3 years ago and I don't feel the emotion in the same way anymore. But that song blows up and I have to constantly go back to that emotion or go back to that memory to share that song and to keep performing it.
Yeah, like I have a question to ask on the process of songwriting. So
Yeah.
you studied psychology in Harvard, which is a skill that can be molded into very different forms. Like psychology is essential for any kind of thing that you do because, like if you're designing stuff, if you're coding, there's always someone that will
Totally.
like be there behind the screen. So do you think like how does psychology mold into songwriting for you? Like what's that?
It plays a huge role in terms of understanding how people think, in terms of understanding how people react to things. There's also a huge connection between psychology and music, right? Kind of what
Yeah,
kind of music, in terms of, there's been a lot of research on what is the BPM, the beats per minute, that
yeah,
might stimulate certain kinds of emotions, right? Or
mm,
in line with certain things. And I also studied global health, and
yeah,
I care really passionately about figuring out a way to marry my love for music and the arts and social impact. So a lot of my songs are about things in that space, but I recognize that it's not, when you're dealing with music and content and art, it's not about being preachy. It's about representing what touches people's souls and emotions, or
yeah,
what people will enjoy. So, for example, I released a song called Permission recently, and it's
yeah,
a song about consent, right? But I knew if I created the song where it's like, you must ask for consent, it would turn a lot of people off.
yeah.
So we made it feel like a very sexy song. And we actually researched a lot of the BPM, the beats per minute, of the songs that people put on their bedroom playlists.
Oh,
And so it's
damn.
actually in that same zone. So
Yeah.
somebody might be, enjoying themselves to it, and subliminally the messaging might be ask for consent, ask for permission, you know. That's one example. Or like with a song of mine called Suntolo, which is about mental health. Similarly, I didn't say mansik sehat or the words, but it was just about the emotion and the feeling, which you can communicate beyond just the art form.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think, while writing songs, there are like two paths which you can take. One is like writing about your experiences about you as a person, or like writing about the audience, what they like. Because, like, how do you find the balance between these two?
That's a good question. I think you have to connect with whatever you're writing about in some way, right? And it doesn't matter. You don't have to have personally experienced everything. For example, on an album that's coming out later this year, I have a song about somebody who cheated on me.
Oh, yeah.
Fortunately, I've not experienced that in my relation, like in my romantic life. However,
Okay.
I have experienced that in a work context, and I've experienced that with friends, right? I felt betrayal. I felt those emotions,
Yeah.
so I can still channel that into something that might be relatable to other people, and it's relatable to me in a different way. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of art, right? For example, I released a song called Tumhari recently, which is about your first crush, or just it's about that first love. And somebody, wrote to me saying that I love the song and I don't relate it to a first crush because I don't remember my first crush, but I relate it to during lockdown, I got to
Yeah.
spend more time with my siblings, this person said, who had, I think they have a big age gap, and how they fell in love, not in a weird way, but in like a sibling
Yeah.
way with their siblings because they hadn't spent time with them. And it's about getting to know that person. So the beauty of art is anybody can make it their own and interpret it their own way. So that applies
Yeah.
to both the creator of it, the artist, and the consumers.
Yeah, I think that's also an interesting take might be that if you're not having ideas about something like about a script for a stand-up comic or a song for an artist, you could like go on to into your past and take ideas from that side. So that's also something which we can do. Okay, so
Yes.
just one last piece of advice which you have for people who are listening to this. Anything?
Sure. My piece of advice would be don't let anybody tell you you're too anything to do anything. What I mean is, don't let anybody tell you you're too young or you're of a specific gender or you're too big or small or look a certain way. You can do anything you put your mind to. And I believe in you. And I hope you believe in yourself because that's the most important thing.
That was really great. Thanks a lot for being on the show. Now we'll go on to rapid fire. I'll be asking you 9 questions. You have to answer each question in
Wow.
10 seconds. Okay?
Okay, let's go.
Cool, cool. Pick one, Harvard or Berkeley.
Harvard.
Okay. One thing you regret trying and you'll still do it again.
Uh, I don't regret anything, actually.
Hmm. That's really nice. Your very first your very first opinion of me.
Oh, that you're very well put together and you did a ton of research for this, which I appreciate.
That thanks a lot, really means a lot. What's an irrational fear you have?
I'm afraid of dogs, and I'm also
Okay.
my real fear is stagnancy. Like I'm afraid of not growing.
What's the coolest thing you learned in the past month?
Oh my god, so many things.
Yeah.
Definitely some random thing about editing that I did not know, and once I figured it out, I was like, whoa, you know.
Texting or talking?
Ooh, texting on the days I have shows, talking on every other day because I like to
Your
use my.
your favorite musician or singer?
That's really hard. I really like this artist named Tori Kelly. Her voice,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyone Indian?
So many. Let's see who comes to mind right now. I think someone who I really admire, like whose voice I really really like, is Jocelyn Royal.
Oh, nice, nice. Last song you listened to?
Um, this song called "No Doubt" by
Okay.
Lars Poken.
Nice. So last but not the least, which movie or show would you like to make a cameo in?
Oh, okay. I would love to make a cameo. This is like, I would love
Yeah.
to make a cameo in a show like Bandish Bandits.
Oh, damn. Actually a big fan of the show.
Right? It's
That's
an
really,
amazing
really nice.
show.
Thanks a lot for being on the show. I think it was really great talking to you.
Thank you so much for
Bye
having me.
bye.
It really means a lot. Thank you. And everybody who's listening, please make sure you go and subscribe to the podcast to hear many other incredible episodes and go say hi to Keshav on all his social platforms.
Thanks a lot. Means a lot. Bye bye. Have a great day ahead. Hey, thanks a lot for sticking till the end. Hope you had an amazing time. You can find the links to Avanti's social handles in the description box below. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, do give us a rating and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the rate MilliseconsHQ for more updates. Lastly, for any questions or feedback regarding the podcast, you can email me at millisekondshq@gmail.com. Stay tuned. Cheers!